Hello everyone, this is Jack the Rambling Raconteur, and I'm here with the Skyrim Book Tag. The original tag is from, I believe, Dini, and I was tagged by Matthew at the Mayberry Book Club. And Skyrim is a video game, I believe in the Elder Scrolls, that I've never played. I do, however, want to mention briefly that I do play board games frequently. Here's one that was in our reading room, Castles of Mad King Ludwig. I really enjoy playing board games. I have some friends I play with. I play with my wife. I've taught my older daughter how to play some board games. She knows what victory points are and to go for those. So, while I've never played Skyrim, I play some board games. But on to the questions. So first up, the Dragonborn can absorb souls, breathe fire, soothe wild beasts, and so much more. What character would be capable of anything? And I thought for a moment about it being Don Quixote, in his own mind at least. He's a legend in his own mind, just like me. But I instead decided to go with Chaucer's Wife of Bath. When she has her prologue, I mean, that individual seems like she is going to survive and succeed in any situation, no matter what happens. She is just an incredible personage. Question 2. Lydia is sworn to carry your burdens. Who is the most annoying side character? And it's hard for me to pick one. I'm just going to say I'm more and more not a fan of just side characters who are just like stage extras to be shunted aside within the plot. I understand the necessity for that, but as I've been able to read more and more, I appreciate characters with depth, especially when secondary characters have fun little details or seem like they have their own agency and they make their own decisions. I think it's particularly noticeable, since March Mystery Madness is going, I think it's particularly noticeable with a lot of female characters in mysteries where they just exist to be objectified by a male character, to be a victim of a male character, to be put upon so that we can see that someone views this character with some type of value, the main character. And I find that sort of just dehumanizing or misogynistic, frankly. Question 3. Did someone steal your sweet roll? What is delectable food from a book you'd like to eat? Well, I'll tell you, if you've ever read the first part of Dracula, you're never going to get away from all the paprika that Harker is fascinated by. George MacDonald Fraser's Flashman and the Redskins has Flashman encountering the dish chili Colorado, which here in the southwestern United States is a personal favorite of your rambling raconteurs. Some of the food in Fried Green Tomatoes by Fanny Flagg, that's quite delicious. I did want to like kind of cheat on this one and say, and again, just brag just a hair. This is a Brunswick stew. This is my southern barbecue cook. This is Brunswick stew. And it takes me about 12 hours to cook, and I do cook it. I cooked some on Christmas this year. I really enjoy barbecue. I make this bizarre white barbecue sauce out of that cookbook that's used in northern Alabama. And I love barbecue, so Brunswick stew. That was in a book. Question 4. Took an arrow to the knee. What character do you think would be most likely to get randomly injured? This was a tough one. Strictly randomly injured is probably Prince Mishkin in Dostoevsky's The Idiot. Just because he would be hapless and it would be unfortunate. And he would understand he was about to be, but he would choose to allow that to happen. The other one would be Cutter from Newton Thornburg's Cutter and Bone. So he had stepped on a landmine in Vietnam, the character, and so he has like a limp, and he has to walk with a cane, and he's got post-traumatic stress disorder, and he thrusts himself into situations where no good can come to him. So those would be my two. Question 5. Aedra versus Daedra. What is the most interesting force of good or evil or otherworldly source of power that you found in a book? Judge Holden from Blood Meridian terrifies me. The Bloodstone in Carl Edward Wagner's Bloodstone is pretty intense. If I was picking just one of evil though, it would probably be Leora from Guy de Maupassant's short story of the same name, where it's this like vampire that feeds on milk and it's invisible to everybody, but it creates the headaches in the narrator, and just seems like it's gonna just take over the world. Very scary. In terms of good, I'm a fan of Michael Moorcock's Eternal Champion, and this is probably my favorite incarnation of his, along with Oswald Bastable, but Coram, and sort of set in like I believe Cornwall in Britain. Really interesting. Question 6. Tamriel is full of double-crossers. Who is your favorite deceitful or suspicious character? Richard III, or in his earlier incarnations, the Duke of Gloucester in Shakespeare's Henry VI plays, and then Richard III. The various asides where he just flat out tells you whatever he's going to do and then lies to everybody else. Vouchsafe to take this ring for me. Oh, he was the cause. Your love was the cause that killed your poor deceased husband, because I loved you so much. And if I cannot prove a lover, then I am determined to prove a villain. I mean, that guy is insane, and he is lying left and right, except to the audience. And I've always been mesmerized by that character and terrified of him as well. Question 7. The Lusty Argonian Maid is the hottest book ever written. What is your favorite romance in a book? I could have probably named 130 that are not my favorite romance. At one point, it might have been Jane Eyre and Mr. Rochester and Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre, but then I read Jean Rhys's Wide Sargasso Sea, and I was like, that can't be it. So I'm going to go with the modern half of A.S. Byatt's Possession, which is subtitled A Romance, with Roland and Maud, the two graduate students or professors who are chasing down the poets. Their romance is very fun, and they seem to respect each other and value each other's minds and ideas as much as they value each other physically, and I like that. Question 8. Stealth Archer is the obvious and practical character build. What type of character do you think is the most useful, and why? I really struggled on this one because there's so many different side characters I do enjoy. I am going to go with the archetype, though, of a pilgrim. So John Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress, Chaucer's Pilgrim, where they're in the Canterbury Tales, where they're all going to tell the stories to each other. Dante is a pilgrim through the Divine Comedy. Marco Polo's travels. Goethe's travels in Italy. I really enjoy all of those. And I think that's a character archetype I really like. Question 9. There's more to the world than just humans. Elves, Khajiit, Argonians, and more. What is your favorite fantasy or sci-fi race? Well, if I have to go from one that's been created, I'm going to snag the gnomes in Alexei Pihov's Shadow Prowler, which is imbued with like Slavic mythology. And the gnomes in that one have invented gunpowder, and they invented the printing press, and they have all their magic books locked up by their enemy cousins, the dwarves. But those gnomes are really, really funny, and they're really interesting, and it's always fun to see a little bit of technology in fantasy. So I'm going to go with that. But as a guy who grew up in Arizona and grew up in the desert, hiking, running, etc., I would love, and maybe this exists, but I don't know where, but I would love for there to be a group of sand elves instead of like dark elves, wood elves, whatever. Sand elves. Never come across them. I've joked about, like, we need sand elves in fantasy for a long time. So, there you go. Finally, question 10. Glitchy, dragons freaking out midair, giants sending you sky high. What is a surprisingly funny or unexpected thing you found in a book? Well, one thing I do is I use movie ticket stubs as my bookmarks. And for a long time, I had the same movie ticket stub because I would read one Russian novel every year. And so I would use the same movie ticket stub in all of those Russian novels, and eventually it just fell apart. But I keep some movie ticket stubs, and I use those, which is always fun. But if I had to pick one in one of our copies of The Sound and the Fury by William Faulkner, my wife, when we met in college, she decided to read it because I had talked about it a few times, and I had no idea she liked me. And to give a sense of how dense I am, I still didn't even realize it when she was reading The Sound and the Fury. You know, the things we do for love. Hashtag Game of Thrones. Our relationship is much healthier than that of the Lannisters. But she was reading Sound and Fury, and I came down to the front desk where she was working, and I was like, "Hey, how are you liking that?" And she wanted to like throw it at me. So we talked about it, and I took out a piece of paper like right there at the desk and sketched out a Compson family tree because of the two Quentins being so confusing. And after that, she ended up enjoying the book a lot more. And so years later, when we started dating and then we got engaged and got married, when we combined our book collections, we found that family tree in her copy of The Sound and the Fury. So that will be my favorite thing I've ever found in a book. In terms of tagging people, gosh, I don't know if Seeking Stories was tagged on this one, so I'll tag them. And thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful week.